Hey, good morning. It's Stuart. It's good to have you back. So, today I thought I'd take some time to share a story about one of my clients. And this particular client managed to scale their recruitment business they already had existing revenues, which we'll get to in a second, but they managed to add 25 million, well, just over $25 million of new revenue in just under 2 years. So I thought I'd take you on that journey, hopefully share some stories and lessons learned that maybe you can apply to your business. So why should you listen to me? Who am I? Well, look, my name is Stuart. I'm a business transformation consultant, have been for many, many years. But what I really focus on is evolving and growing and scaling recruitment businesses primarily. And what I do is I help those businesses, catapult themselves forward, build new revenues, build higher margin sort of services. And my case studies, my credibility is I've done this for over 40 companies. Each one of those has earned, generated, middle to high seven figures. Some of those have done like this one, well in the eight figures. But all of those have easily got $5-6 million dollars additional revenues, and crucially, they're all at higher profits. So they're 2x or 3x profits. Beyond that, I've advised and coached probably 100 or so other businesses, and coached personally, in excess of 700 plus consultants in and around this space. My forte really is go-to-market, service creation, business transformation. So I thought I'd just spend some time sharing this story. Hopefully it'll be interesting. So let's jump into the background, right? So who is this client? Now, just to be clear, I can't name names. I'm under NDAs. I'm on non-disclosure agreements with every client I work with because what I do is quite sensitive. But the lessons are applicable to any business, certainly in recruitment and certainly across any service industry. So let's go into a bit more depth now. And yeah, look, if you need help, if you want to have a chat, feel free to reach out. My details are below. I continue to be a very active consultant in this market, and coach other businesses on how to do this. So the company in question, again, I can't name them, but I can bring it to life. They're a recruitment business, pretty good, pretty successful, probably around 40 to 50 heads, doing around 20 to 25 million pounds, that is, revenue, and had done for quite a few years. Both the founders were ex-recruiters, so they knew the market very, very well. And they specialised in a couple of areas, couple of industries, quite a broad skill set across those industries, mainly financial services, insurance and legal, were the three main pillars that they focused on. And what they did was a lot of tech transformation, program direction, project steering type roles, did some software development and things like that. Now, what was their goal? What was their ambition? Well, they wanted to grow, right? They wanted to get more client traction, more I call it stickiness, right? But essentially what they were finding is a lot of the clients they were working with, they'd do one or two roles. They had about a 70% contract driven business. So contractors, temporary workers, and about 30% was permanent hires. But definitely contract was the biggest part of their business. Reason I'm just looking over here, by the way, is all of this is unscripted. I don't script my videos. I like to just talk off the cuff. I want it to be far more conversational. But I've just got a couple of bullet points that I just want to keep to get across. So yeah, they had some good footprint. They'd been in operation for about 5-6 years, doing well. They were put in touch with me through another client of mine. All of my business is largely referral driven, and they wanted to get more traction. And they wanted to really increase their margins. Their margins were being challenged by some competitors in the market, very common thing. But equally, those clients that they were servicing were starting to really question the value that they were providing. They were looking at bringing services in-house. They already had internal talent teams. They were already looking at other third parties. So they wanted to really stabilise that margin position. Now, the big thing for them was their exit strategy. What they really wanted to do was to transform their business from being pure recruitment to more of a consultative style business. They didn't want to stop recruiting. They really enjoyed the industry, and they enjoyed the work that they did. That's why they've been doing it for quite a long time. But what they wanted to do was, they were both approaching their 40s. They had a mindful view that they don't want to do this forever. So how can they maximize their exit? And so I came in to essentially help them, figure out a lot of these things and build a bit of a roadmap for them. So that's what I want to share today is the journey that I took them on. And hopefully you'll learn from some of these things. You'll look at your business, you'll think about what you're doing, where you're taking, your services or your clients, and hopefully some of the things I say resonate. And like I've said, my area of focus for the past 10, 13 years has been recruitment, but that is quite broad. What I typically focus on is the service industry, and that is advisory, consultative, professional services type businesses that are using human capital, so using people to solve business problems, be that deploying people, hiring people, outsourcing problems. What underpins all of that is they're using humans. So let's start with the first point, which is, focus. The one thing that I did when I came in, and I do for a lot of my clients, is I look at their business and I look at the markets and I look at the industries they're serving. And I also look at what current services they've got in operation. And the one thing that is quite common in all businesses and all markets is less is more. It really is less is more. So we need to hone our focus into one or two or three areas really, and double down and understand the problems that we're solving. Now, if you're in business, ultimately you're there to solve problems. And if you're not solving problems, you're not really delivering a lot of value. That's not to say that you don't have a successful business. That's not to say that you're not helping your clients. I'm sure you probably are. But if you're thinking, how can I ratchet my success, drive my margins or my revenue upwards, then you need to start thinking about value selling, value positioning, rather than, transactional product service positioning. So the first thing we look at is, where are they currently servicing clients? What problems are we currently identifying? Are there current themes across those clients? And what I find for a lot of businesses is they just don't analyze, they don't question the types of services they're providing and the types of work they're doing. So the first thing that we do, and I got my client to do, is to go and actually ask their customers, but not just ask them outright, what is the problem? There's actually a process that we go through. It's called problem discovery. And it all formulates around building our ICP, which is our ideal customer profile, if you like. So who are we going to sell to, why we're selling to them, what problems we're fixing for them, what value are we adding for them. And there's a certain approach to go through on that. I will have a separate video. If I haven't done it already, I will do it, around how you go and build ICPs. And there's lots of videos on YouTube. You can Google it. You can search for it. But mine, again, is very focused on the particular verticals I specialize in. So we go and speak to the clients. We analyze and assess and try and spot themes. The other thing that we do is we speak to the actual experts that we're deploying. So remember, this is recruitment. Recruitment is about placing people. What we want to understand is, what problems are those people facing once we deploy them? So we want to get both sides of the story, and then that formulates a better idea of what problems we're encountering. So that was the first part of the journey, understanding the problem. The next thing we want to be looking at is, well, how can we help them solve those problems? At the moment, the current way of doing that is just to place people, right? It's a very, very limited value add. Yes, it's incredibly important to that end client, let's just call it an insurance company, to hire the right individual. But there's a lot of things that happen before hiring that individual, and there's a lot of things that happen after that individual being hired. Now, crucially for this client, my client I'm talking about, is they wanted to evolve themselves up the value chain. So they wanted to move away from being just a pure recruitment player to being more of a consultancy player. They wanted to be able to help their clients solve real problems, and they were open to, and this is the reason why they really got the success to the level they got it. They were willing to commit to actually taking ownership of the work and the problems that their clients were actually having. So what we looked at doing was, how can we build a set of services that our clients need based upon those problem themes that we would be comfortable managing and essentially ensuring or assuring the success against those. And almost like putting a guarantee, if this doesn't work, we won't charge you. And those are common across service industries. They're called service credits or service penalties. You don't want to enter into those in a contractual point of view, but there are ways around that. But the point here is that how can we, almost get assurance to our client that we do what we say, right? And, they can buy into the value and they feel comfortable about, providing or outsourcing or alleviating that pain and say, well, you take care of that for me. So that's the second start of the process is, what are the services? So we've got the pains, we've got the services, but these are initial ideas. These aren't validated. So the worst thing you can do in any business when you're building any type of service, and again, I'm talking about service, not product. Product, I would say, is like if I'm selling, books, or I'm selling laptops, or, whatever. We're talking about services that are ongoing. Is we need to validate our problem idea. Now, we can go back to that initial audience. That's what I got my client to do, is to go back to that initial audience and say, right, we spoke about these problem themes. We identified these pain points. Here's some ideas of how we think we could do this. And here's how we would help you. Would this resonate? That becomes what is almost our MVP, our minimum viable product, or I call it MVS, minimum viable service. What we're trying to establish here is something I call service market fit. If you know anything about the product space or tech startups or SaaS businesses or any digital business, especially in the internet space, product market fit is about how you find the right solution to solve a problem for your client. And that starts with minimum viable product or minimum viable service. What is the minimum thing you can take to market that will fix the pain, the initial pain, that we can then iterate and improve upon time after time? So this is not a one-step process. This is a continual iteration, test, measure, improve process. So we went with that MVS, minimum viable service, to those clients, and we got our first couple of wins. Now these are very small, very, very small, wins, like 20, 30K projects. And this is all about understanding the process. Is what we're doing right? Can we manage the process? Can we deploy a candidate or a set of candidates? Can we understand what they need to do? Can we hold them to account with what needs to be done? Can we do it in the time frame? And then we learn lessons from that. And what we learn from that is, well, what problems did we encounter as a business? So is our operational process good enough? Is our service process good enough? Do we have the ability to manage the people that we're deploying? How do we get them and hold them to account? How do we ensure the quality is good enough? And there's all ways of doing that, which I'm not going to go into too much detail because it would be quite a long video. I want to try and keep this around 25 minutes. But what we learned from that first, 2-3 projects was, yes, we could deploy the candidates. Yes, we could get them on the ground quickly. But what we actually found was just the client interaction. And this came back to things like brand perception, awareness. That client, not the stakeholder, so let's just say it was an insurance IT director, for example, they bought into our service. But the problem is, once we deployed our consultants, our candidates, the impact they had across the organisation was limited because of how we'd been interpreted. We were still viewed as a recruitment business. So what we needed to do is change some of our messaging, our comms, our onboarding, our client onboarding process, setting those expectations. What you're buying from us now is a service. That service is to deliver the following outcomes. It is not to provide a recruitment. It's not to provide talent. It is to get this work completed. So we went through round 2. We iterated our service, the service at that point, and then we rolled this out into another couple 3 clients. Again, similar sorts of projects, 30, 40K projects. Now, the time period, just to give you an idea at this point, was probably, we're around month 3, month 4 by now, into this 24-month transformation. And following this iteration, same process again, lessons learned. What we learned this time was more about sign-off and validation. Was the quality good enough? Was the client happy? And we just had to put some tweaks and measures into process. So what we ended up with is our go-to-market service. And we could build our content, we could build our collateral, we could build our messaging. We had our sales material, if you like. This is not about cold outbound. This is all very, very warm referral, inbound. So we're creating a lot of insight and in interest. And there's a separate video I've got about how to do that. So we've got these conversations and these dialogues going now. And where it started moving towards now was bigger programs of work. So we now took this MVS, if you like, MVS V2, and we scaled it out. So the initial audience of companies and stakeholders we spoke to was probably about 15, 20. Well, we now took that to 150. So what we're doing now is we're testing and scaling. Now, remember my point about we have to continually test and iterate. If you're not testing and iterating, your product or your service is going to fail to evolve. You'll get some revenues for the first 6, 12 months, but after that, you're probably going to struggle. So we scaled it out across, 125, 150, I think, by memory. And what we're doing is we're creating interest. We're creating demand. We're trying to understand pains. We're trying to, look at ways to alleviate those pains. And so what we're trying to do is sow this seed of different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching that problem. Now, all of this audience, this additional 125, 150 companies that we're going to, still know my client as a recruitment business. Historic relationships are, I know you as a recruiter, I've bought people from you, you've done a great job. So I trust you as the leaders and I trust your name, but I don't trust that you understand the problems. So what we have to do is through this consultative process, and it's called consultative selling, is wind that conversation back. And what we're doing is we're trying to empathize and understand the problems that client is facing. And the way that we do that is through, just like I am now, storytelling, building the journey, referencing what other clients have done with us. So we had some proof, case studies by now. Yes, they're very small. Again, we're not trying to go and smash, multi-million pound deals at this point. We're trying to build credibility and confidence and trust. So that process continues for another 2-3 months. We win some additional projects, but crucially what we're doing is we're starting to change the brand and perception. At this point, there is 2 very clear identities of my client. There is the recruitment arm and there is the consulting arm, all under the same name, all under the same brand, but very, very clear messaging and language about how one complements the other. And that's the key thing here, is how they both complement each other. So we're up to about month 7, 8 now, I think, by memory, maybe a bit further, maybe month 9. Revenues earned around this point are about $250,000, about 300,000. So not huge, right? We've got to start massively scaling now. And this is where we really started to crank the handle. So we started to just ratchet up the size of the opportunities and the problems we were talking about. If you can fix a problem, if you can deliver a service with 1 or 2 individuals, and that is transformative for your client, then you can do it with 10 or 15 people. The process is the same. The level of impact is the same. It's just the numbers that go around that. And this is something to remember when you're looking at your own pricing and how you go to market is the value that you deliver. So if you're taking a transactional viewpoint of a cost plus model, or the cost of my service is X and it's priced against competitors, you're looking at it completely wrong. You need to look at it from the value that you instill into your clients. So this is part of a mindset shift I had to get my clients to think about, which was, well, no, what you're doing is you're intrinsically fixing problems. And if you didn't fix this, the client would have to do that. And if they had to do that, the impact to their business wouldn't just be the time and the resource cost. It's all the external factors across the business, time of leadership, time of other third parties, there is a knock-on effect, and there is actually a multiplication. There is an equation you can work, like a value-based equation, that then quantifies really what your price point is and your value point is. Now, what we started doing is we started doing some very, very niche focusing around the insurance space, some quite large transformative programs in and around big ERP deployments. So these are big programs of work. And the client, my client, I think around month 12, month 13, managed to secure a couple of, £1.5, £2 million projects. These are like 8 to 12 month programs of work, each with probably 5 or 6 people in them, quite highly paid individuals. And in the background, one of the things I haven't mentioned is all about the community building, but I want to build a separate video around that. So at this point, what they're now booking around is, going by memory, because it's a couple of years ago, it's probably around 2.5, 3 million of revenue coming through. We're at around month 13, and things are starting to really ratchet up now. So in order to get to this 25 million that I've mentioned in dollars, by the way, so around 21, 22 million pounds, I think, we need to win some pretty big projects. And we did. So what we started doing was we started rolling this into the financial services space, which is, typically has more money, has bigger problems, but same types of challenges, same scaling. And remember, we're continually iterating, we're learning from how we do the service, how we measure the service, the quality that we're delivering. Are we on track? Are our outcomes good? All of those things, right? In the background, we've hired a couple of internal quality delivery managers, service delivery, engagement delivery type people who are managing the process. And then we managed to go and secure, again, through the same process, right? This is not different just because it's a 10 million project versus a, £100,000 project or engagement. It doesn't change. All that changes is the economic value, the unit economics of it. They were just bigger tickets. They were bigger problems. So we managed to secure a couple of, I think the first one was 5.5 million. And I think the second one was about 7-8 million projects. And these were, long-term projects. I think one of them was about 16 months, I think. And the other one was about 21 months. So nearly 2-year transformation programs. And that's essentially how it catapulted and rolled forward, right? So at this point, they're knocking on the door of the high teens now. And it was just a case of rinse, repeat, right? They've got a team, they've scaled. Again, the things I'm not talking about are organizational design back in the business. Have to hire salespeople. Typical scaling problems, right? Going to have to hire salespeople, train those salespeople. What we actually did was took some internal, really good, seasoned recruitment consultants and just transform them into more consultancy sales people. Gave them the right skills, gave them the right tools. I would coach them and help them in the background. I'd help them, reposition the problem, reposition the pain. The one thing that was common throughout all of this is we never talked about the need for talent. So remember, this was a recruitment business going into organizations that knew them as a recruitment business. So what we had to do is shift that expectation or the perception of, I know you as a recruitment business. And if you're thinking about what you do and you're thinking about evolving your services or evolving your client footprint, you need to get that off the table immediately. What we wanted the client to be recognizing is, I'm not here to talk about talent with you. I'm here to talk about problems. And what I want to do is I want to share my problems so you can provide me some solutions to those things. So we never talked about, well, what candidates, what skills do you need? How many do you need? Do you need project managers, developers, ERP consultants, whatever it is, right? We talked about, what is it you're looking to transform? Why does this project need to happen? What's the impact if this project doesn't get done on time? What's the impact to you personally? Will you not achieve your bonus? Will you not achieve your promotion? Do you have contingency plans in place? What other options have you looked in the market? Have you thought about doing this internally? Why are you not doing it internally? If you are going to do it internally, what's making you think about doing it internally? So a lot of this is, the whys and the what type of questioning. And again, I'll have a separate video on the whole consultative like solution-oriented sales process. And it's just that continual, journey of understand the problem, put together a very compelling solution that delivers value, that alleviates the pain, that has a very, very clear path to success that you can then convey, and make sure you execute and make sure you deliver. The one thing we had to make sure that they were building these community candidate pools so we could service. And then right around, month 21, 22, yeah, I think it was, they picked up a huge deal, right? They managed to pick up another 8-9 million deal, which actually then grew beyond that. So the initial early projects had rolled off and finished. That first, couple of 1.5-2 million projects were now coming towards an end. And then they managed to secure this other big project with one of the same clients, actually. And this is a really key thing, that when you start working in this way, in a problem solving, not transacting sort of approach, your tenure, your stickiness with your clients becomes far more deep rooted. That client, as clients see me, is a pain reliever, trusted advisor, and that's where you want to really get yourself. So if you're working in the recruitment space and you're deploying contractors or permanent candidates, doesn't really matter what type of candidates you're deploying, and this works in any market. I've done this across social work, healthcare. I've done it in renewable energy. I've done it in financial services, pharma, IT, engineering, construction. Does not matter. I don't care what the skill set is. If you are primarily involved in sourcing great skills for clients, your ability to evolve that position to be able to either do more around the person, so more complementary value-added services around like talent heat mapping, talent insight, industry trends, onboarding, skills assessment, there's a whole plethora of things you can do. Or you can go even further and you can actually transform into a more consultancy style business, because every problem requires people, and that's the beauty of recruitment, right? If you're in recruitment, you know your market incredibly well, and the value that you add can be really, really strong. So look, hopefully this video is a bit of interest. I am very, very happy to talk more length. If there's something you would like to know, then feel free to put a comment below. There's a link to book a call with me if you want to speak to me. You don't have to. I have a program that I run all my clients through. It's called Accelerate and Elevate. It is 100% success. Every client that has gone through my program has 100% success of achieving mid 7 figures in new revenue at higher margins or more. You don't have to buy that. Doesn't bother me if you don't. As I said, most of my business is referral driven anyway. I formed this channel really because I just want to share insight. I just want to share knowledge. I see a lot of people in the industry talking a lot of shit and a lot of crap, and there's a lot of rubbish out there about how you should scale a recruitment business to do whatever. I'm not a recruiter. So if you want to be better at recruiting, go and find a recruitment coach. But if you want to be better, have a better positioned business that is earning more margins, more revenue, is more stable, is future proof against things like AI because of the intrinsic value that you're delivering, then hopefully this is resonating with you. So thanks very much for taking the time to listen. Anything you want to ask me, drop a comment below, and hopefully you'll tune in again. Thanks very much.